The Desperate Alliance. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the doors parted to admit Ambassador Nix Tally. The Merivian diplomat's crystalline exoskeleton caught the light, fracturing it into 1,000 colors that danced across the walls. Where normally this entrance would have been met with polite applause, today the silence was profound. The scorch marks on Nix Tally's ceremonial armor and the missing fragments of her crest told a story more eloquent than any words. Captain Maya Rise, Earth's junior representative to the Council, straightened in her seat. As the newest and least advanced member of the Galactic Alliance, humans were typically seated at the edges of important gatherings, more observers than participants. But something in the Merivian's desperate gait made Maya lean forward. Honorable representatives. Nix Tally's voice modulator translated her crystalline resonances into standard galactic. The swarm has broken through our defensive perimeter at Proxima Helix. 3 colony worlds have gone silent. Our fleet, her voice cracked with electronic distortion. Our fleet has been scattered. We estimate total destruction of the Merivian collective within 14 standard cycles, unless immediate military assistance is rendered. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. The swarm was no mere border dispute or pirate incursion. For centuries, rumors had circulated about this nomadic hivemund that consumed everything in its path, but many had dismissed these stories as exaggerations. High Counselor Zex Orion of the Arcturan Empire, whose sleek battlecruisers formed the backbone of the Alliance's military might, rose from his seat. His scaled appendages gestured for calm. The Arcturan Empire sympathizes with the Merivian plight, he announced, his tone formal but distant. However, our primary battle group is engaged in exercises near the Perseus Arm. Redeployment would take at minimum 20 cycles. Similar excuses echoed from the other major powers. Border conflicts, training exercises, maintenance cycles, all legitimate reasons that nevertheless added up to abandonment. Maya watched Nix Tally's bioluminescent patterns, dim with each rejection. With sudden clarity, Maya understood what was happening. The Alliance members weren't just making excuses, they were cutting their losses. The Merivians were being sacrificed as a buffer, buying time for the more established powers to prepare their defenses. Earth can respond, Maya found herself saying, rising to her feet. The chamber fell silent again, this time with an undercurrent of confusion. Earth's representatives rarely spoke during full sessions. Captain Reyes, High Counselor Zex Orion's voice carried a note of condescension. While we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm, this is hardly a situation for a single planet's defense force. The swarm has destroyed fleets with technology centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. Maya swallowed hard. The Galactic Alliance Charter, which Earth signed in good faith, guarantees mutual defense. While our advanced vessels are still under construction, we do have our training fleet stationed at Jupiter. 78 vessels, fully crewed and operational. Training vessels. Ambassador Nix Tally's translator couldn't fully convey her desperation, but the rapid flashing of her bioluminescence made it clear. Against the swarm. Earth vessels, Maya continued with more confidence than she felt, may lack the technological sophistication of the Alliance, but they are sturdy, adaptable, and their crews are exceptionally resourced. Admiral Helena Way commands the training fleet, and she is one of our finest tacticians. The Earth delegation behind Maya shifted uncomfortably. Maya had significantly oversold the capabilities of the training fleet, a collection of outdated vessels used primarily to drill new recruits, commanded by an officer whose brilliance was matched only by her tendency to clash with authority. Admiral Koshval of the Centauri Protectorate laughed outright. These vessels would be museum pieces by our standards. They would be annihilated within moments of engagement. Perhaps, Maya conceded, but they can be on station at Proxima Helix within 3 cycles. Can anyone else offer faster assistance? The silence answered her question. The Merivian collective accepts Earth's offer with profound gratitude, Nix Tally said, her crystalline form glittering with what Maya recognized as their species' equivalent of tears. We will share all tactical data on the swarm and provide whatever support we can. As the council session adjourned, Maya's superior, Ambassador Rodriguez, gripped her arm with barely contained fury. Do you realize what you've done? You've just sentenced the training fleet to death. I've upheld our treaty obligations, Maya replied, though doubt gnawed at her. And Admiral Wei might surprise everyone. Admiral Helena Wei stared at the holographic representation of the Proxima Helix system, her weathered face illuminated by the blue glow. At 58, she should have been commanding Earth's newly commissioned Vanguard fleet. Instead, she'd been relegated to training recruits on vessels old enough to be considered antiques, punishment for her vocal criticism of Earth's rushed integration into the Galactic Alliance. They're sending us against the swarm, she said, her voice flat. It wasn't a question. The briefing packet from Earth Command had been explicit, if not particularly helpful. Commander Alejandro Diaz, her XO aboard the flagship Resilient, grimaced. Yes, Mom. Apparently, we were the only ones available to respond. Or the only ones expendable, Wei corrected him. She expanded the hologram, studying the fractured remains of the Meribian defensive line. Show me what we know about the enemy. The hologram shifted to display the swarm vessels, if they could be called vessels. Massive organic-looking structures, more like living creatures than constructed ships, ranging from 5 to 20 kilometers in length. Their surfaces bristled with what appeared to be sensory organs and weapon emplacements. Meribian intelligence indicates their weapons are primarily energy-based, Dias continued. Some kind of focused radiation that overwhelms shields and disrupts matter at the molecular level. Their hulls seem to regenerate damage over time, and they communicate via some form of quantum entanglement that makes their coordination instantaneous. Weed nodded slowly. And our training fleet is supposed to stop them. 78 outdated vessels against. How many? At last count, 17 swarm capital ships and approximately 200 smaller escorts. Wei didn't blink. Well, at least the odds are only 3 to 1 against. I've faced worse. With respect, Admiral, not against technology this advanced. Wei's eyes narrowed as she studied the swarm formations. Technology isn't everything, Commander. These swarm ships move in perfect coordination. Too perfect. There's no improvisation, no adaptation. It's as if they're all extensions of a single mind. That's the prevailing theory, yes. Then perhaps that's their weakness. Wei straightened up. Call all ship captains to a strategy conference and get me direct communication with whatever Meribian forces remain. I want every scrap of data they have on swarm behavior during combat. You have a plan? Diaz asked, hope creeping into his voice. Wei's smile was grim. Not yet, but humans have always excelled at one thing that the rest of the galaxy seems to lack. What's that? Admiral. Finding creative ways to overcome superior force. It's practically our species' heritage. The training fleet emerged from FTL at the edge of the Proxima Helix system 5 days later. The journey had been spent in intensive preparation, retrofitting systems, drilling crews, and developing tactics based on the limited intelligence available. On the bridge of the Resilient, Admiral Wei watched as the tactical display populated with sensor readings. The news wasn't good. 2 more Meribian worlds had fallen silent during their transit. The remaining Meribian forces had consolidated around their homeworld, Crystallis Prime, a last stand that would buy their civilian evacuation ships precious time, but little else. Open a channel to the Meribian command, Wei ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing a Meribian officer whose crystalline carapace was cracked in several places. Earth vessels. The translation came through. Your arrival is noted, though I fear it changes little. We have lost 70% of our defense forces. I am Admiral Helena Wei of Earth's training fleet. We're here to assist in the defense of Crystallis Prime. The Meribian officer's bioluminescence pulsed in what Wei had learned was their equivalent of a bitter laugh. With these vessels, Our most advanced warships could barely slow the swarm. These antiquated craft will be destroyed in moments. We leaned forward. Perhaps. But before we resign ourselves to defeat, I'd like to try something the swarm hasn't encountered before. And what might that be, Admiral? Human unpredictability. The swarm clearly evolved to counter the tactics and technologies used by the major galactic powers. But Earth's approach to warfare is different. The Meridian's lights pulsed in skepticism. Different how? You'll see. For now, I need you to continue your current defensive pattern, but be prepared to adapt when I give the signal. And if possible, I need a direct communication link to your civilian evacuation coordinator. After the transmission ended, Commander Diaz approached Wei's command chair. The fleet is in position, Admiral. All ships report ready for combat operations. We nodded. Deploy in theta formation. Have all vessels power down to minimal operations except for sensors and communications. Diaz blinked in surprise. Power down. That will leave us completely vulnerable. It will also make us nearly invisible to their sensors against the background radiation of the system. We need to observe how they fight before we engage, and if they detect us before we're ready. Wei's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display. Then humanity's first major contribution to galactic defense will be a cautionary tale about hubris. Hours passed as the training fleet drifted silently at the system's edge, gathering data as the swarm methodically dismantled the remaining Meridian defenses. Wei watched with clinical detachment, noting patterns, response times, formation changes. They're not adapting, she murmured eventually. Mom. Diaz looked up from his station. The swarm. They're executing the same attack patterns regardless of how the Meridians respond. Perfect coordination, yes, but no tactical evolution. They identified an optimal approach, and they're sticking to it regardless of context. Wei straightened in her chair. They've never faced human tactics before because we're new to the galactic stage. That gives us one chance, one opportunity to do something they can't predict. What are your orders, Admiral? Wei's eyes gleamed. Power up all vessels. Deploy our modified defense drones. And open a channel to the Meridian commander. It's time to show the swarm why humans have survived this long despite ourselves. The human advantage. The bridge of the Resilient hummed with tension as the training fleet accelerated toward the battle. On screens throughout the fleet, Admiral Wei's face appeared, her expression resolute. All ships, this is Admiral Wei. You've studied the battle plan. You understand the risks. What we attempt today has never been tried against the swarm, and I won't lie to you. Our chances are slim. But the people of Crystallis Prime are counting on us, and beyond them, potentially all sentient life in this sector. She paused, her gaze steady. Humans have always been underestimated. Throughout our history, we've faced superior forces and prevailed through innovation, adaptation, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Today, we fight not just for Earth or for the Meridians, but to prove that technology alone does not determine victory. Execute Phase 1. The training fleet split into 3 battle groups, approaching from different vectors. Rather than the tight, orderly formations favored by other galactic powers, the Earth vessels moved in seemingly chaotic patterns, constantly adjusting course and speed. On the swarm side of the battlefield, the massive biomechanical ships reacted instantly, their perfect formation shifting to address the new threat. Energy weapons lashed out, catching 2 human vessels. The destroyers Intrepid and Dauntless vanished in expanding clouds of debris and atmosphere. 2 ships lost already, Commander Diaz reported grimly. We nodded, her expression unchanged. As expected, continue with Phase 1. The remaining Earth vessels launched their payloads, not conventional missiles or energy weapons, but thousands of small, modified defense drones. These machines, usually used for training exercises, had been hastily reprogrammed with a single purpose: to broadcast on all frequencies, across the electromagnetic spectrum, focusing particularly on the quantum bands the swarm used for communication. The effect was instantaneous. The swarm formation faltered, individual ships momentarily losing coordination as their perfect communication network was flooded with nonsensical data. "It's working," Diaz said, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. "Their formation is breaking down." "For now," Wei cautioned. "They'll adapt quickly. Proceed to Phase 2. The Earth fleet accelerated, driving straight into the gaps that had appeared in the swarm formation. It was a maneuver that defied conventional space combat wisdom. Placing yourself between enemy vessels invited crossfire, but Wei was counting on the swarm's predictability. Sure enough, the swarm ships attempted to target the human vessels, but in doing so, several of their energy weapons struck their own ships on the opposite side. The swarm's perfect coordination, which had been their strength, became a vulnerability when that coordination was disrupted. "The Meribians are launching their attack run," Diaz reported. On the tactical display, the remaining Meribian forces surged forward, targeting the swarm ships that showed signs of damage from friendly fire. Their crystalline vessels, designed to channel and amplify energy, focused their remaining firepower with precision. "Signal the civilian evacuation coordinator," Wei ordered. "The path to the jump point is clear. They need to move now while we have the swarm distracted." For several crucial minutes, the battle hung in balance. 3 more Earth vessels were destroyed, their sacrifice buying time for the Meribian evacuation ships to slip past the engagement zone toward safety. The swarm began to adapt, their ships falling back to reestablish formation. "They're regrouping," Diaz warned. "Our disruption strategy is losing effectiveness." We nodded. As expected, all ships execute Phase 3. The remaining Earth vessels suddenly reversed course, accelerating away from the swarm at maximum thrust. It appeared to be a retreat, and the swarm responded predictably, pursuing with their superior speed. "They're pursuing exactly as you predicted," Diaz noted, "but they'll overtake us within minutes." "That's the plan," Wei replied calmly. "Status of the modified FTL drives. Engineering reports ready on your command, though they stress that what we're attempting violates at least 6 safety protocols." Wei's lips curved in a faint smile. "Noted. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Execute." Throughout the training fleet, engineers overrode the safety systems on their FTL drives. Instead of initiating a proper faster-than-light jump, they created localized fields that immediately collapsed, releasing enormous bursts of energy in precisely calculated patterns. The effect was like setting off depth charges in space. The energy releases created massive distortions in the fabric of space-time directly in the path of the pursuing swarm vessels. Unable to alter course quickly enough, several swarm ships were caught in these distortions, their massive hulls twisting as local space-time fluctuated wildly around them. 6 swarm capital ships heavily damaged, Diaz reported, his voice rising with excitement. 3 appear to have lost all power. And our fleet. 12 more vessels reporting critical drive damage from the backwash. They're drifting, life support only. Weed nodded grimly. The cost was high, but they had achieved what the advanced fleets of the Galactic Alliance could not. They had hurt the swarm. "The Meribian evacuation ships have cleared the system," Diaz added. "Over 70% of their civilian population is safely away." Wei allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before reality reasserted itself. "The swarm is still operational, Commander, and we've expended our one advantage of surprise." As if to emphasize her point, the remaining swarm vessels began to regroup, adapting their formation to account for their losses. Their movements were different now, more cautious, less perfectly coordinated. They had learned. "All vessels," Wei broadcast to the fleet, "prepare for final defensive action. Our primary mission is accomplished. The evacuation is complete. Now we buy them as much time as possible to reach Alliance space." Across the training fleet, captains acknowledged the order. There was no panic, no protest, just grim determination. They had known from the start this might be a one-way mission. Before the final engagement could begin, however, a new alert sounded on the Resilience bridge. Multiple FTL signatures detected. The sensor officer reported, confusion in his voice. They're Alliance signatures, Admiral. The view screen showed the fabric of space tearing open as dozens of sleek, advanced vessels emerged. Arcturan dreadnoughts, Centauri strike cruisers, and the gleaming silver ships of half a dozen other Alliance powers. A communication request came through, and the screen shifted to show the scaled features of High Counselor Zexorian himself. Admiral Wei, the Arcturan's voice was formal, but carried an undercurrent of what might have been respect. It appears we underestimated both humanity's resolve and ingenuity. Wei's expression remained neutral. Your arrival is timely, High Counselor, though I confess, unexpected. When the Meribian evacuation ships reached our listening post with reports of Earth vessels engaging the swarm successfully, the Alliance Council convened an emergency session. It was decided unanimously that such valor should not stand alone. Wei arched an eyebrow. How diplomatic, Counselor. I suspect the fact that we demonstrated an effective tactic against the swarm might have influenced that decision as well. Zexorian's scales shifted in what might have been the Arcturan equivalent of embarrassment. Indeed, your methods were unorthodox, but effective. The Alliance fleet is prepared to engage the remaining swarm vessels using modifications based on your approach. We'll coordinate our remaining operational vessels with your attack, Wei offered. That would be most welcome, Zexorian replied. It seems humanity has much to teach the Alliance about warfare after all. As the Alliance fleet moved into position, Commander Diaz approached Wei's chair. They came, he said quietly. After leaving us to face the swarm alone, they actually came. Of course they did, Wei replied, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Once we proved we could hurt the swarm, we became valuable. And once the Meribians spread the word of our actions, the Alliance couldn't risk appearing less honorable than the newcomers. Diaz shook his head in admiration. You predicted this. I predicted they would act in their own self-interest, Wei corrected. Fortunately, that aligned with ours this time. As the combined forces of Earth and the Galactic Alliance engaged the remaining swarm vessels, a new chapter in interstellar relations was being written. The outdated training fleet, crewed by humans who refused to accept the impossible, had changed the galaxy's understanding of both humanity and warfare itself. In the aftermath, as recovery operations began and the full extent of the victory became clear, Admiral Wei received a priority communication from Earth. Captain Maya Raya's face appeared on screen, her expression a mixture of relief and pride. Admiral, news of your victory has reached Earth. The Galactic Council is in an uproar, half of them demanding to know how you did it, the other half proposing immediate technology transfers to upgrade our fleet. Wei smiled thinly. Tell them we'll consider their offers. But remind them that our most effective weapon wasn't technology at all. What was it? Rise asked. The same thing that's kept humanity alive through our long, violent history, Wei replied. Our stubborn refusal to accept the limitations others place upon us, and our endless capacity to find new ways to survive against the odds. As the transmission ended, Wei turned her attention back to the tactical display, where Alliance and Earth vessels worked side by side to secure the system. The swarm had been driven back, but not defeated. There would be more battles ahead, but humanity had earned its place among the stars not through advanced technology, but through the qualities that had defined them since they first looked up at the night sky and dared to dream of reaching it. Adaptability, creativity, and the unyielding courage to face impossible odds with nothing but determination and the conviction that somehow, someway, humanity would find a path to victory.